Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading and give you a few stats and things like that, as well as info on the books. This week I just wanted to make a really quick announcement at the start of this video. I haven't actually been watching TV, so it's not a TV movie thing. I've literally been reading because some of these books are huge. And when I was looking at the page count this week, I was like, I don't even know how I did that. This week I launched a Patreon page, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, Patreon is a website that allows you to subscribe to various creative type people and support them if you so choose. People get a little bit funny about it. I'm purely putting it out there just as a way of supporting my channel. I will leave a link to my Patreon page down below, but I want people to know that nothing on this channel is actually going to change. My uploading schedule is going to stay the same. The content is going to stay the same. However, the Patreon page will allow you to sort of participate a little bit more in what sort of comes up on my channel, and also in some of the books that I read and some of the reviews that I do. So there's a whole lot of tiers and things that you can check out. By all means, don't feel like you have to subscribe to my Patreon page at all. It's not like that. It is purely there just as an addition to this YouTube channel, and it's sort of like a little bit of an experiment just to see what it's like and if it's worthwhile pursuing. So it's very low-key at the moment. I'll leave a link down below. Check it out if you're interested, but you know, no pressure. This is my reading week from the 5th to the 11th of May. I read 8 books this week. 7 were young adult books, 1 was an adult book, 2 were anthologies and 6 were novels. I read a total of 3,008 pages, and my yearly reading total is up to 123 books. It's a lot, so let's dive in. The first book that I read this week was actually a reread. It's Subsidio by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This was a 2018 release from Allen and Unwin, and as I did the first time I read it, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. As with the first time as well, I reread this listening to the audio at the same time as reading the text. And it's just a wonderful experience with these books because you've got the full cast and it's just very cinematic in the way that it's been put together. I read this for one of the team read challenges for the Bookemon Badgathon. I forget which team this book represented. And in fact, the book that was represented was Illuminae, but I've reread books 1 and 2, so I used book 3 as the substitute, and that's totally fine. This is the third and final book in the Illuminae series, and as such, unless you've read this series, which I know a lot of people have, but if you haven't read the series, I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but the Illuminae Files is a young adult science fiction series. It is told through mixed media, chat logs, transcripts, graphic representations, and all sorts of things. It's really cool. It's a really unique reading experience, particularly when you tie it in with the audiobook. This is set in a future where humans have basically gone on, they've expanded out through the universe, and there is one little colony outpost, Corenza 4, that is an illegal mining colony that is sort of hidden on the outskirts. One day a corporation comes along and basically bombs the hell out of it because they decide they actually want to take control of the mine because whatever they're mining, I forget what it is part of what fuels their ships, and so it's highly valuable. And since Corenza 4 is an illegal mining colony, they think no one's really going to notice if they wipe the people off the face of the earth. However, people escape on some ships, and that's basically what Illuminae is. Subsidio basically brings the story in a full arc, and we end up back on Corenza 4, and we see the aftermath of the initial attack and what's happening, while you've also got the people from books 1 and 2 still in space trying to work out how they're actually going to hold the corporation accountable. It is really fun. It is science fiction and politics and military drama. It's, you know, right up my alley, and I highly enjoy it. Then I read Amelia Westlake by Erin Goff for the Jester badge as part of the Bookemon Badgathon. This was a 2018 release from Hardy Grant Egmont, and it is a Love Osway story. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a really enjoyable read. It was quite funny, which sort of fits in the Jester badge, which is what I was hoping, because I don't tend to have a lot of funny books, or at least not books that are purely humour-based. Amelia Westlake follows Harriet Price and Will Everhart, who are 2 girls who attend a very fancy all-girls school. They are frenemies, sort of. Well, they become sort of frenemies in the start of this book. They end up teaming up to take down a teacher who is making rather sexist remarks at the students within the school, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. So they invent this girl, Amelia Westlake, who is behind a series of cartoons that highlight all of the things that the private school is really sort of covering up or doesn't really talk about. From teachers who grade people based on preference, to the male teacher who is making inappropriate comments, to all sorts of things. It's quite enjoyable because this gets taken well out of proportion. Amelia Westlake becomes this third character who doesn't actually exist, which is fantastic. So I did really enjoy it. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot of really female positive language going on in here. Lots of diverse representation. Definitely worth picking up if you like Love YA Contemporary. Then I read Meet Me at the Intersection, an anthology edited by Rebecca Lim and Amberlynn Quamelina. This was a 2018 release from Fremantle Press, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is, as it says, an anthology of short stories that focus on own voice stories from people who identify with different minority groups, whether that be people with a disability, people on the LGBTQIA+ spectrum, and also people from diverse cultural backgrounds. I really enjoyed reading this. The stories were fantastic. They were very engaging. You have all different sort of lengths, and the stories really tie in from one another, and they actually transition really nicely between the different groups of people writing their stories, which I thought was really wonderful. Highly recommend it. Definitely check it out if you get a chance. I should say that I read the Meet Me at the Intersection book for the Rainbow Badge for the Bookemon Badgathon, which was to read a book with LGBTQIA+ representation. Then I read Harlequins Riddle by Rachel Nightingale. This is book 1 of the Tales of Taria, and this is a 2017 release from Odyssey Books, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I read this for the Fantastical Badge for the Bookemon Badgathon, which is to read a fantasy book, and this was a book that I picked up in order to review, so I've got to write that up very soon. It is set in a world that sort of seems pre-industrial, and the main character, Mina, is, I think she's 17 years old. 10 years earlier, her brother disappeared when he joined up with a group of traveling players, which is sort of like a performance troupe as such. And so 10 years later, another troupe comes in to the town, and Mina is offered a job with them, and she decides to take it in order to sort of find out what happened to her brother and see if she can track him down and what happened. Mina herself has a particularly special gift for storytelling, and when combined with the players of this troupe who seemingly have these almost magical abilities to create and become their characters, strange and amazing things start happening, and Mina begins to realize that perhaps not everything is as it seems, and the places that these players are drawing their characters from might be a little bit more sinister than it seems on the surface. This was a really interesting read. I have to admit I found it quite slow at times, but I was very intrigued by the concept, which is why I gave it 3 stars and not higher or lower, because I did really enjoy this sort of concept. It was just something different. I haven't read anything quite like it, and I enjoyed that aspect. Next, I read Shauna's Great Expectations by Kathleen Laughlin, and I received this as a review copy because I'm part of the Instagram tour, which my post should be going up actually today, so hopefully I remember to do that. This is a 2019 release from Allen and Unwin, and I think I gave it about a 3 out of 5 stars. This one is, it's taken me a while to sort of settle on a star rating for this, because it's not a bad book, but I think there are messages in it that need to be unpacked, particularly if you've got younger YA readers picking this book up. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Shauna's Great Expectations follows Shauna, who is an Indigenous student who has a scholarship at a very prestigious girls' boarding school. And at the start of the book, she has all of these plans. She's in her final year of school. She's going to graduate. She's going to go on and become, I believe it's a journalist. And she's got these expectations of how her year is going to go. And then very quickly, she finds out that she is actually pregnant, and she's in this prestigious religious girls' school, and this begins to cause problems for her. So this book deals with teenage pregnancy, which is fine. I think it's a really important topic because it is not uncommon. There is a tiny bit of discussion around pro-choice, and then it rapidly becomes very much pro-life. And I don't have an issue with that because both sides are totally valid, but at the same time, I also think that considering, I thought that the transition between the two was very sharp and very pointed, and probably not unpacked as much as it should have been. So it makes me wonder whether there's an agenda in this book. As a grown female woman, I can totally separate the two and read this as a fictional text. But I think if kids are going to read it, particularly impressionable teens, I think you need to be able to unpack that with them. So the writing's fine, the character's fine. Olivia, who is a side character in this story, was my favorite character because she's another Indigenous student, and her background is quite traumatic, and Shauna is actually quite unpleasant to her to begin with, and yet has to sort of realize that, you know, perhaps her actions are very, very unhelpful to this very fragile girl who needs her help. And it sort of forces Shauna to pay attention to someone other than herself, which I thought was useful, because otherwise Shauna could have come across as a very, very unlikable character for all the wrong reasons, if that makes sense. Then I read Growing Up Aboriginal in Australia. I read this for the diversity badge, which was to read a book with a person of colour. This is actually an anthology of short stories written by Indigenous Australians, and they are just incredible. They're all non-fiction, so they're all their own personal stories. Some of them range from a couple of pages long, some of them are only 1 or 2 pages long. They're very quick snapshots into their life growing up Aboriginal in Australia, and as a non-Indigenous person, you know, that can be quite confronting, but it was also really important for me to read the book. I do highly recommend it. I know there's a whole series, because there's one that's growing up Muslim in Australia, and I think there's another one as well, which I want to try and track down. There are stacks of stories in here. That's the first page. That's the second page of stories. And you have everything from people telling childhood stories. Some of them are offering advice. Some of them have poetry, and it's just a wonderful read, and I highly recommend it. I also read The Devourer in Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. This was the Team Mystic book pick for the team challenges, and I'm so glad that I read it. This is a 2019 release. This is the Hyperion edition, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Apparently people have said that this is a cross between The Raven Boys and Stranger Things. Having neither read The Raven Boys or watched Stranger Things, with no intention to do either, this book was highly entertaining. It sort of read like a young adult, almost urban fantasy / paranormal type story. Violet Saunders is a 17-year-old girl who has just lost her sister, and she and her mother are returning to her mother's hometown of Four Paths in New York City. Her mother has never spoken about this town, why she left it, or anything to do with the town, so Violet basically knows nothing about what she's walking into. However, she happens to be a descendant of one of the 4 founders of the town. In the town's history, the 4 founders were responsible for apparently stopping something truly evil from coming into the town and killing everyone, and now it is up to the descendants of those 4 founding families to maintain the protection of the town. So when Violet arrives, she meets Justin Hawthorne, who is one of the descendants, and Harper Collins, who is one of the founding family, one of the daughters of the founding families. And there's also Isaac, who we actually don't get his perspective in this, but he's the 4th of the descendants of the founding families. Each of them have strange abilities that come along with passing the test to be one of the protectors of the town. Because of a whole lot of different things that have happened, Justin, Harper and Isaac have had a major falling out, and so they barely speak to one another, and sort of Violet gets caught up in the middle. This was dark and creepy, and I did a horrible job of explaining it, but I actually don't think it's something I can explain. Just go into it and read it. It was highly enjoyable. There is some LGBTQIA plus representation. There is also a whole lot of great friendship and enemy dynamic stuff going on between the teens, and it's just generally creepy, which I appreciated. And the last book that I read this week was Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I read this for the Chiller badge for the Bookemon Badgathon, which was to read a horror book, and I don't know whether this is strictly horror, but it was damn creepy enough for me, so I'm going to count it. Mira Grant is the pen name for another pen name for Shauna Maguire, so I've read now a couple of things by Shauna Maguire in long form. This one I infinitely preferred over Middle Game, so much so. I love this. This was great. This was a 2017 release from Orbit. It is about a group of scientists who are going off to the Mariana Trench to investigate mermaids and mermaid sightings. So 7 years prior to the beginning of this book, there was another group of scientists and actors who actually went out to the Mariana Trench as part of a mockumentary that was being filmed about mermaids. However, the entire crew disappeared off their boat, and there was some quite disturbing footage that was leaked to the public, which has mostly been declared a hoax. However, some people believe in the truth and that the mermaids are real and that they are not particularly nice, and they might just be on this side of creepy. So flash forward 7 years later, and the company that was filming the mockumentary has decided that they want to send another group out there because they need to save face, but they also want to prove once and for all whether or not the mermaids do exist. And so the sister of one of the people who went missing on the first expedition is hired, as well as a whole host of other people. And they have a brand new flashy fancy cruise ship boat and all the modern amenities and technology that you could ask for, and they head out into the open ocean to hunt down mermaids, and things do not go well. This is, yeah, creepy. I will probably never ever go on a cruise ship ever again. Well, not that I've ever been on one. I don't mind small boats, but I don't think I'll be doing that. I really enjoyed this. I loved all of the characters. They were really engaging and entertaining. There was a whole lot of diversity. There was LGBTQIA+ diversity. One of the main characters is bisexual. There was deaf representation. One of the main characters, one of the side characters are deaf, and there is also a lot in there about ASL and sign language and how we communicate, which I thought was really fantastic and really interesting to read about. The mermaids were delightfully creepy and gruesome. The whole thing was just, it was fun to read. I mean, I still had the problem where the novel length book felt really dense. It took a long time for me to get through this, but at the same time, it was a great read and I really enjoyed it. And I was so much more invested in this world than I was in Middle Game. So I will take this. This is a keeper. So those were all the books that I read in the last 7 days. Don't ask me how I did it. I actually have no idea. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking them up in the future. I'd love to hear about that. Otherwise, let me know what you have been reading over the last 7 days. I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.